Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm AndyRC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the official version of the Happymodel Larva X. This is a 2.5-inch ultralight brushless micro with a dry weight of 50 grams. Now, it doesn't come with a battery, but my favourite is this 450 milliamp Tattoo 3S LiPo. I did have to retune the model for the heavier battery, although I couldn't seem to hook this one up completely when it came to the tune, regardless of the battery size. It would always, at some point, get prop wash oscillations and the nose would slightly bob up and down. And even if I mess with the filters or the PIDs, I have a sneaky suspicion that the problem is to do with the frame. They've gone with this cube style frame similar to Diatone for durability, but I think this has sacrificed the flight characteristics. Now, it's not terrible and I'd actually recommend this model because it's got a really long flight time and it's going to be super durable for sure. But what I'm getting at is that these models are so light anyways, I'm yet to break a frame in a crash. So if you did manage to break one of these ultralights, then it probably deserved it. Nothing is bulletproof and you have no idea how spoiled we are that crashing any of these into concrete and them surviving is actually an option compared to planes and helis and the things that we were doing just 10 years ago. But on a separate note, this cube design almost permanently got it stuck in a tree. Sadly, I didn't have the DVR going when that happened, but it's worth bearing in mind if you are interested in this model. I'd rather have a nicer flying quad and gone with a more traditional arm layout and just make the arms thicker like on the GEP-RC Phantom. And when I think about what the struts on Tiny Whoops do to the flight characteristics and compare it to all of these spars and this extra octagonal mounting plate, it's all deflecting the airflow from the props back through to the props. So I think that's why any setting or PID change or filter isn't fixing these slight wobbles and prop wash oscillations. Now, some people don't like the Avan 2.5-inch props and will put it down to that, but I've got models where they fly absolutely superb with these props and I really like them. Their website also says that the props that you're going to get is going to be a lottery because Emacs aren't providing the props in time. So you might be sent the HQ2525 props, which they have also sent to me. The website says that it supports a 2 to 3S LiPo, 300 to 450 milliamp for a 3S and 450 milliamp for 2S. And the problem with those variations with a quad as light as this is that the PIDs are gonna need changing to compensate for the different battery weights, which you could do via the PID profiles, but they haven't done that. They've only given one custom PID profile, which seems to work best with a 300 milliamp LiPo. Anyways, with a 300 milliamp 3S, its all-up weight is 76 grams, and with the Tattoo 450 milliamp 3S, it weighs 91 grams. I prefer the 450 milliamp 3S LiPo over the 300 milliamp because, first of all, I was getting over a 5.5 minute flight time, and that was giving it absolute death. And second of all, it actually gained performance despite being heavier, and that's because it's a higher capacity LiPo. Therefore, it can provide more current than the 300 milliamp LiPo. So it took much longer before the 450 milliamp began to sag. You do still get a 4-minute flight time on the 300 milliamp 3S LiPo though, but it was sagging below 10 volts on its first punch out, which isn't healthy for the LiPo. Anyways, let's move on to the rest of the specs, which are almost identical to the Ishin Cinecan. So the motors are an 1103 7000 kV naked bottom motor with silicon wires that connect to the Crazy Bee V3 all-in-one board via JST connectors. I went into greater detail on the V3 board in my review of the Cinecan, so I'll put a card up there so you can go and check that out. But the important changes are 10 amp rated ESCs and a beefed up regulator, so there's no need for an external capacitor. Oh, and don't get the SPI version, get one of the full receiver options, because otherwise the control range is about 80 meters with the SPI receiver. It came flash with Betaflight version 4.04, and other than the PIDs, it was set up identical to the Ishin Cinecan. So again, you can go and watch that video to see what I changed, but to summarize, other than the on-screen display, it needs quite a lot of things changing. The VTX is the best part of this model, which is the Diamond VTX V2. Not only does it have the benefits of smart audio, such as pit mode, and it switches from 25, 100 and 200 milliwatt through the on-screen display, which is why you need to get one of the full receiver versions, otherwise that is completely wasted. But it also has a built-in DVR that records in 720p 30 at 30 megabit. Now this results in a 16:9 image, and this is a 4:3 camera, but you can edit that in a video editor and could even apply dynamic stretching, which I will be doing later. There is one downside: if you pull the battery without stopping the recording, then it doesn't save the footage, so you have to remember to press this back button once you have landed. The recording starts automatically when you plug in. It does bypass the on-screen display, which I personally like because I always record the DVR through my goggles for the on-screen display information, but I know it's some people's preference to have it on the onboard recorded footage. Either way, I think this is going to be a very popular VTX for micros. They also recently updated the firmware. It used to split the files into 2-minute segments, but mine's come with the latest version, which doesn't split the files. The front button is to change the settings if you don't want to use smart audio, but just use smart audio. In the on-screen display for smart audio, 25 milliwatts is 25 milliwatts. The next one up is 100 milliwatt, and the third one is 200 milliwatt. So it matches up, but don't think that it's outputting 800 milliwatt because it lets you select it. They've just piggybacked off the smart audio technology. If you're still not sure what the power output is set at, then there are some LEDs on the VTX which light up green for 25 milliwatt, blue for 100 and red for 200 milliwatt. The VTX uses a micro UFL connector, which you kind of have to do at this size to get the weight down, and the antenna is a nicely placed sleeve dipole. I believe the canopy has gone through various iterations, with this being the official version. It looks like they've gone for a light but strong plastic, which in sunlight at high throttle does give a little bit of jello through the camera, but it's not that bad. The canopy did come cracked out of the box though, which suggests that there is a little bit too much tension in the side fixture. It's not an integral part of the canopy though, so I don't think it's going to have any effect on the camera itself, and the camera is fixed in solid and not moving at all. Speaking of the camera, it's the Runcam Nano 2, and you can pretty much have it at any camera angle you want. Other than that, you get a battery strap which is far too long for any of the suggested lipos, so that's going to need to be trimmed down. And they have used this double-sided sticky foam as a cushion for the lipo. It needs some silicone on there instead, otherwise the lipo is going to throw pretty easily. You do get a spare canopy along with a screwdriver, some spare screws, nuts, an Allen key, as well as a manual, but you'll need to be accustomed to Betaflight to get this one in the air. Okay, let's go for a punch test. This is a 300 milliamp 3S, and I'm gonna try and keep it in as close as possible. This thing is so tiny, it just disappears. Okay, maybe I need to go out a little bit further. Let's try that again. Yeah, so much power for a little model, and you can't hear it at all, which is brilliant. So this is the Tattoo 450 milliamp 3S. Let's see what the punch is like with this guy. Seems exactly the same to me. And this is 2S, just a try. Now they recommend 450 milliamp for 2S, but I'd actually go bigger. So this is a 650 milliamp 2S, and really I guess you could tame it with this LiPo, but for me I'm going to be using this if I'm flying at the indoor sports hall. But let's see how much punch it's got with a 2S. It's actually not that bad. So let's see how it handles acro. Yeah, you can notice the lack of power, but still hovering though, way below 50% on a 2S. So this first bit of DVR footage was taken with a Happymodel 300 milliamp 3S LiPo, and it's flying smoothly for now, but watch on a full throttle punch out down to 8 volts 11 seconds in. That is why I am not a fan of this LiPo and prefer the 450 milliamp Tattoo LiPo. Now I'm going to dive the tree here. Look at the voltage screaming at me, but also the RSSI in the 30s, and my transmitter is also shouting at me saying RSSI critical. And I told Happymodel about this and they said, oh, it's your transmitter, not realizing that, you know, I've got loads of transmitters and this is not the first time I've experienced low RSSI with other transmitters. So yeah, get the full receiver versions if you're interested in this model. Now the sun came out, so I thought I would see what the jello would be like, and pretty much non-existent, so that was pretty impressive. But did you see there, we started to get a wobble, and that just gets worse throughout the flight, and this is what makes me suspect that it's the frame that is the issue. Again, at the bottom there we have got prop wash that I was not getting before, and as the LiPo voltage drops, then you can see I'm getting bounce back and things as well. And I wasn't getting that at the start of the LiPo, so I just think there is not enough power to power through all those obstructions. Anyways, look at that, 4-minute flight time. So this next flight here, this was done with the 450 milliamp LiPo, and on a full punch out you can see there that the voltage hasn't dropped and it's not flashing, so it stayed above 10 volts. I'm still getting some wobbles though, so not quite happy with the tune. I did spend ages trying to get a decent tune out of this, and on any LiPo I couldn't, so I think I'm putting it down to the frame. Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, but you know, it's a flat, calm day. That's how I knew that something was up, you know. I'm trying everything to get this thing not bobbing and, you know, not doing bounce back and prop wash oscillations and things, and it just wouldn't do it. So, you know, if you know somebody that came up with a good tune that doesn't do this, then, you know, put it in the comments, but I'd be very surprised because I spent a long time trying to not get it to do it, and I just think it's a characteristic of the frame. Now, it's not dreadful, and I've seen much worse. I think I'm just so used to the smooth flying of Betaflight these days, and when something like this crops up on a calm day, then it's really noticeable. But yeah, you know, I did enjoy flying it, I have to say. I like the camera. I think the built-in DVR is superb, but the range, look at that, you know, I'm just halfway through the field, and it should not be in the 30s. And you know, it does actually fail safe as well. It's not a case of it going down to 0. If you start to see any lower than 30 on the RSSI, it's going to fall out of the sky. So that's why I'm having to keep it close in. You can see again little wobbles there, and you know, there's a little bit of noise as well filtering through to the video feed. It's not debilitating whatsoever, but I still do think that they need to add a little capacitor on this board. It was the same with the Cinecan, just a couple of lines of noise from the electrical system. But yeah, super long flight time with this, and look at that. It took 2 minutes and 33 seconds until I started getting voltage warnings on a punch out. But there you go, you can see 5.5 minute flight time with that one. Pretty impressive. Anyways, I took this model along to a much more fun place, I think, especially with the low range. This area is much better suited for this model. There's lots of obstacles to fly around, and I'm gonna switch between the DVR footage that it records on board, which I think is very good, but I'm also going to squish it back to 4:3 and then dynamically stretch it, and I think that is a good thing that you can do. RC Shim actually has made a video which is identical to the video that I made, which got taken down because I got a copyright strike. So go over there and watch that video if you want to know how to do dynamic stretching. But I wouldn't be surprised if that video gets taken down, because it is literally a complete copy of what I did with my video, and it got taken down. So hurry up and go and watch that before it does. Anyways, I'll put a link in the description if you wish to get this model, and I'll leave you with some flying. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.